Heartland Highways is made possible in part by Sarah Bush Lincoln Health System, dedicated to providing care for all and creating healthy communities in East Central Illinois, offering general and specialty medicine, including a regional cancer center, heart and lung center, orthopedics and sports medicine, a center for interventional pain, and a full complement of diagnostic and rehabilitative services. Sarah Bush Lincoln, trusted, compassionate care.
On this episode of Heartland Highways, it's a preview of the people, places, and adventures for our new season.
That's all coming up next, so don't go away. Welcome to Season 9 of Heartland Highways. I'm Lori Casey.
And I'm Kate Pleasant, and we've got some great adventures in store for you this year. In today's episode, we'll take a look at the places that we've been and the people that we've met along the way.
This year, we've got a few theme shows lined up for you, including tours of 4 nature centers located right here in East Central Illinois.
Ernie Ballard was a nature lover who wanted to share that enthusiasm with the community. He donated 210 acres of farmland near Altamont, Illinois to the local Soil and Water Conservation District. Realizing the land would be better served as a nature center, a nonprofit organization under the direction of Ballard was formed, and soon after a nature center bearing his namesake opened to the public.
Over 30 years ago, in the midst of a rapid development period, adventurer and nature lover Helen Douglas Hart had a vision. She wanted to create a place where people could come to experience nature in its purest form. So she set aside 33 acres of land outside of Mattoon, Illinois to be preserved. This created what would become her legacy, the Douglas Hart Nature Center.
The Rock Springs Conservation Area opened in 1975, and it's an area that comprises 1,343 acres, a wide variety of habitats. It's the largest conservation area that the district owns. For this particular area, when people come and they hike at the Nature Center on the trails and they get down along the Sangamon River Valley and they're into the hills and valleys with huge oak trees that are 200 plus years old, they're amazed. They just stand in awe at what is right here in their own neighborhood that they've never discovered if they haven't had the chance to get out and visit like that.
We also decided to look at how art is celebrated in the small towns around us. We didn't have to go far for our first stop. In fact, it was right next to us at the Tarbell Arts Center right here on the campus of Eastern Illinois University in Charleston.
And so the idea was to make the arts as accessible as they could to the people of East Central Illinois. And knowing that different offerings and accessibility to the arts is somewhat limited because we're in a rural area. And so from the very beginning, the Tarbell is intended to serve both the campus community and then the general community.
We also headed to the Gaslight Art Colony in Marshall, Illinois, where a small community has come together in a big way.
We don't have to go to Terre Haute, we don't have to go clear over to Indianapolis or Chicago to the Art Institute. Sure, you'll see masters, but there's a lot of talent right here locally, and I think it's good for the communities to see what everyone's doing.
In Marshall, Illinois, there's a place where local art is showcased on a regular basis. The Gaslight Art Colony in downtown Marshall was the vision of local resident and artist Joe Rich.
Not far from Marshall is Paris and the Bicentennial Art Center and Museum. Their permanent collection features many pieces from local artists. Back in the 1940s, a group of artists and art enthusiasts in Paris, Illinois, got together and began meeting in homes and storefronts. Over time, the group grew and evolved, and in 1976, during the United States Bicentennial celebration, they applied for funding through the Horizon Project and made it official. The Paris Bicentennial Art Center and Museum was born. But it wasn't actually until several years later that the group's collection would find a permanent home.
Our final small-town art tour ends up in Sullivan, Illinois, and the New Prairie Gallery, which is just down the street from the Little Theater on the Square, a place we did a story on a few years ago.
We offer space for consignment of artists, and we basically wanted to provide an opportunity in Sullivan for people to enjoy art, people to buy art, and for artists to display and sell their artwork.
This season, we also met up with some talented young people in our region. Now, these musicians all play string instruments. In Charleston, classical music is just part of the repertoire for the kids involved in a program called Summer Strings.
For kids who want to play bluegrass, look no further than just over the Indiana border. Judy Green began teaching music lessons in her Clinton home, located on Coonholler Road, several years ago, and in 2005, she took a group of kids appropriately named the Coonholler Kids on the road to share their love for bluegrass music.
For this next set of adventures, we got a little closer to home. In fact, all of the people and places in these stories can be found on the campus of Eastern Illinois University here in Charleston. First, we learned a little bit about the history of teacher education through the creation of the normal school system here in Illinois.
What started as a movement in the East eventually came to the state of Illinois in the mid-1800s. A method for training teachers that standardized their schooling brought about the development of normal or teacher training colleges around the state. In 1895, Eastern State Normal School came into existence. From 1899 to 1921, students were granted diplomas or certificates, not academic degrees.
In our next adventure, we went right across the street from WEIU to the Secret Garden, a beautiful garden hidden from view by several surrounding buildings.
A lot of people just walk past, and it isn't until you actually walk through the garden that you realize there's something here.
Just across campus from the Secret Garden is the EIU Observatory. Run by the physics department, the observatory houses a 16-inch telescope that provides students and the public alike with opportunities to see the stars and planets.
The telescope there that we use is what they call a Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope. Most of the focusing is done by a mirror in the back. When you say 16 inches, that means that's the sort of the diameter of the lens or the mirror that people use. Telescopes are big light buckets, so we're looking at dim objects, so literally in this case size does matter, so the bigger the better.
Every good Heartland Highway season always has a few stories about collectors, and of course this season is no exception. We met car and motorcycle collector Dick Levi in Springfield, Illinois. Now his collection of cars and motorcycles is housed in what you might call the ultimate man cave.
No, my background's not in cars, but I've always liked cars. When I was younger, I didn't have the money to afford them, but I liked them, and so as I got older and was able to afford cars, I started collecting them. first car I acquired when I was 16 was a 1955 Chevrolet that I paid $300 for, which was probably too much because it burned oil like crazy. But of course I had to find another 55 later, and so I've got one now that's much nicer than the one I owned. But my first car was a 1955 Chevrolet.
It was this 1987 Ferrari that Dick says started his collection about 15 years ago. He built an airplane hangar to first house the planes for his business, and then added a wing and then another for collecting and storing his cars and motorcycles.
A little closer to home in Olney, Illinois, we met our second collector, Dave Cunningham. Dave has more than 110 baseball gloves and nearly 40 vintage softball gloves. The baseball gloves reflect the many different web styles and glove styles from the 1880s all the way to the 1950s.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I never get.
I have been collecting for most of my life. I started out as just a child collecting rocks and minerals, then I went into collecting coins and collecting U.S. stamps, and then I migrated into collecting ball cards. Did that for a few years, and then out of that I just decided I was going to try collecting something different, and as a result I ended up collecting the old-time vintage ball gloves.
Our last collector was even nice enough to let us come back for a second time to shoot all the introductions for our collector-themed show.
We're talking about Greg Harris of rural Windsor, Illinois. Greg collects Shell oil memorabilia and has quite the display of items ranging from old gas pumps all the way to an authentic Shell oil service station uniform.
Decided I wanted to collect a gas sign from all the companies I could find. Well, my start out was doing pretty good, but the one I really wanted was Shell, and I could never get a Shell sign. That was the hardest one for me to get. It was a long time before I ever got one, but we started collecting. Finally got one, we'd collect this and that, and it ended up being collect everything from matchbooks to you see it.
We see a lot of interesting places throughout our travels for the show, but one of our favorite parts is getting to meet the people that we come across.
This season we were fortunate enough to meet several people you might call crafty and, if nothing else, talented. Rick Wallace of Neoga, Illinois uses a scroll saw and a whole lot of imagination to make his creations out of wood.
Going through grade school and then finally in the junior high, I discovered woodworking, you know, and it just took off after that, you know, and it's always something that's really interested me. I could always put so much effort into it, and there's nothing better, there's not a better feeling in the world than to create something, you know, even for everybody else to see too.
He even took our photo and made it into one of his wooden masterpieces. Roy Gaunt of Shelbyville, Illinois was another interesting person we met with an interesting craft. He makes display tractors out of old sewing machines. He repaints, reuses, and repurposes almost all of the parts, along with some new ones to come up with tractors ranging from John Deere to Farmall and beyond. I guess you could say that he uses a lot of imagination too.
Old Singers work good, that old type do. The newer ones work good like the tractors you have here. The newer sewing machines, but most of them don't have a lot of the adjustments and extra things on them.
We traveled up to Paxton, Illinois this season where we met Pat Milchuk. Now Pat does something that not a lot of individuals do anymore. She's a milliner. Pat's passion for hat making and her stunning creations truly make her one of a kind.
About 3 years ago, I decided it's just going to be hats, and that's as far as I'm going to go. And I have had the most wonderful time of my life with this. It's very fulfilling, and I'm still designing. And I'm 71, and I'm still in the business. And it gives me everything I need.
Something else we weren't short on this season were people with interesting jobs.
Now our fellow producer Fred Peralta met University of Illinois chimes master Sue Wood, who is responsible for playing the chimes at Altgeld Hall at the Champaign-Urbana campus. This is a job we had never heard of, but the story behind it is quite unique.
Well, our visitors in general come up to the door and say, oh, I thought this was all automatic. And you're standing there playing. And I said, I usually say, well, if you hear music being played, it's somebody standing at this keyboard. If you hear the automatic chimes, that is the quarter-hour chimes, that is automatic. That system was put in the year after the chimes themselves, the bells themselves were put in.
This next group left us with no shortage of smiles. We caught up with a local Santa Claus Club full of jolly St. Nics that all sport their own real beards. They meet several times a year before the holidays to swap Santa stories and talk about what's in store for the season to come.
We're not a club, we're a family. A family of Santas. We're not related, but whenever you get a group of Santas, we're family. And yeah, you can say we're a club, but it's a Santa of giving, loving, and we love what we do.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
For this last story in our Interesting Jobs category, we were able to get up close with some of the world's smallest birds. We were invited by some friends of the show to attend a hummingbird banding. Several of the birds are caught, counted, banded, and then released so they can be tracked by the Illinois Audubon Society in order to learn more and educate the public about the habits of hummingbirds.
Just like people like owls and eagles and so forth are so fascinating. First of all, they're fast, they are different than any other bird. It's something that they wish they could be themselves, have that freedom of flying backwards and up and down, go where they want to go when they want to go, and they like just to watch them.
We've got two stories this year that are related to transportation history. First, in Mattoon, we visited the newly restored Illinois Central Depot.
By the time we started, it was boarded up on several sides. The roof was leaking. It was full of plaster and chemicals and asbestos and all sorts of things. When we were trying to raise funds, we told people, you get a threefer, you get an historic building that's been restored, you get a centerpiece for downtown or midtown Mattoon, and you get a passenger station. And the transportation link is an important part of what the city is or can be.
With the invention of the Model T, Americans were eager to explore the U.S., but a lack of good quality highways proved to be a roadblock. The Good Roads movement in the early part of the 20th century brought about the creation of the Dixie Highway. Completed in 1921, it was a series of roads that connected Chicago to Miami. In Illinois, it was the longest continuous paved road in the state. This summer, Kate and I met up with the A's R Us Model A Touring Club out of Chicago. They were recreating a historic drive from nearly 100 years ago.
We like traveling old roads, we like traveling named roads, we like traveling roads that have no names, and our backcountry roads and squiggly roads and curvy roads and things like that. We don't want to travel the heavily traveled roads because we can travel at the pace that we normally travel at without having to be harassed by other motorists who get upset that we're going too slow.
We also made our way to a few unique destinations this year, including the Casey Softball Hall of Honor and Museum, which is home to the Illinois Amateur Softball Association Hall of Fame.
Many people come here that aren't necessarily interested in softball, and they find it fascinating to see so much memorabilia, and it's, I think, colorful, and people are fascinated that Casey can support something of this nature.
From softball, we headed to the oldest micro-midget sprint track in the United States. Since 1956, fans and drivers have been coming to the Coles County Speedway near Mattoon.
The first track was located just west of Charleston on Old Route 16 at my father's livestock auction facility. I believe they ran there for about a year and a half, and then they decided they needed a more permanent location. So then the track moved approximately 2 miles east of town on the Popham farm, and they raced there for 2 to 3 years until the club had enough money of their own. They bought 10 acres of land located about halfway between Mattoon and Charleston. I believe that was in 1960, and the track was ready to go in 1961.
Now, you all know that small towns are favorite stops for us here at Heartland Highways, and Hazeldale, Illinois fits the bill. This town of less than 200 boasts a popular restaurant that serves up home cooking, including their famous cinnamon rolls and pies.
Oh, this is home. I've always lived here. I always wanted to do something. Mom and Dad had the old store building next door, and they ran. My grandma ran the post office, and Mom and Dad ran the store. So we was always this was it here in Hazeldale, and I always loved it here. And I thought, well, we needed something here for the local people, so we opened this up, and people will drive. I didn't know. My husband was very skeptical that they wouldn't, but people will drive to get food and bake things. I was kind of surprised.
And speaking of food, we learned all about cooking while on a visit to the Kitchen Conservatory in St. Louis.
And so what makes it different is that the United States standard for butter is 80% fat. The standard in Europe is 82% fat. So it just makes it that little bit better.
Our final destination was at the Hall of Hollywood Hoosiers in Vincennes, Indiana. The museum is one man's collection of memorabilia featuring Indiana natives with connections to the entertainment industry.
What I have here is a collection of people from Indiana who went to Hollywood, the Hall of Hollywood Hoosiers. It covers the history of Hollywood with the Indiana connection, from the very beginning of motion pictures to today.
Back in the 50s and 60s, East Central Illinois was a hub for country music. This summer, several of those musicians and singers got together for their annual reunion and jam session called the Pastimers Reunion.
It just gets into you, and those sounds that you play, and the people dance, and you just have a great time, and it's just something that gets into you, I guess, you know. So as long as I'm able to play, I'm going to play, and I know these fellas feel the same way. And there's some real professional guys. I mean, there's some guys who can really play in Central Illinois.
Tucked away in the countryside near Tower Hill, Illinois, people come from all over to experience gospel music at a place called The Barn.
Once a cattle auction site, The Barn was the vision of Joanne Clark, Judy Smith, and their husbands.
The thing that's made this special is that all the people that drive here to be a part of the program in the audience are here because they want to. They've driven from Pekin, or they've driven from Decatur, or they've driven from Springfield. So they had a desire to come and hear the music to begin with. Well, once they've come and had such a pleasant evening, they're ready to come back and see whatever's going to be next. And they're not afraid to bring company with them if they're there, because they know it's going to be a good program. It's going to be a fun evening.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed a look ahead at what's in store for this season on Heartland Highways.
For more information about the show or the stories we've just told you about, you can visit our website at weiu.net/HH.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Heartland Highways is made possible in part by Sarah Bush Lincoln Health System, dedicated to providing care for all and creating healthy communities in East Central Illinois, offering general and specialty medicine, including a regional cancer center, heart and lung center, orthopedics and sports medicine, a center for interventional pain, and a full complement of diagnostic and rehabilitative services. Sarah Bush Lincoln, trusted, compassionate care.
Are we recording? I don't think it is. I better check.
What does it say? I'm not certain. I'm Kate Pleasant.
Oh, I'm Laura Kate. Oh, it's me!
Oh, I'm me!